We now know that the naming of the Genesis terminal was very intentional by Valve. Genesis, beginning, terminal, end. And the name manifests itself in Valve's recent actions. They are spelling out right in front of us that this is the beginning of the end for cases. But also for one other thing that Counter-Strike players hold dearly to their heart. Float values and trade-ups. No, I've explained it ad nauseum in previous videos, but I will give you just a very, very brief background as to what floats are in Counter-Strike. Every gun or knife, when unboxed, is assigned a random value bounded between 0 and 1 that effectively just determines how ugly or how good your skin looks. And you can see which numbers determine which wear rating your gun will be assigned when you get it in-game. Let us shift our attention to the left side of this range. While items on the right side of this red bar don't rely on float for their value, they basically just go off market price, this range right here is very sought after by a lot of Counter-Strike players. Two types in particular. One group, these are the collectors. These are people that take pride in having like the cleanest, best looking skins, whatever it may be, and they'll pay top dollar for your gun if you have one. But the second and bigger reason as to why these guns hold so much value is because of their usefulness, and that is because of how useful they are in trade-up contracts. In trade-ups, as we know, we put in 10 inputs and we get one output from a higher rarity, right? Blue to purple, purple to pink, so on and so forth. Now this output right here is completely random, but its float isn't. The float is calculated by taking the average float of these 10 inputs that you put in. So as you can imagine, a 0.00, X float is very valuable when doing a trade-up because it can turn your gun into a basically guaranteed factory new skin, which is where you stand to make the most amount of money. Now, for a very long stretch of time, there were two ways to get low float guns. One is to simply get lucky, right? You open up a case, you may get unlucky and get a blue, but it's so low float that you're able to sell it for $500. Also in the same vein, a weekly drop. But if you're doing trade-ups on the regular, you're not getting lucky that often, so you have to buy them. So what does the low float market even fucking look like? Well, on the Steam community market, it's essentially non-existent, right? And that's because Steam right now kind of lends itself to being a more simple market, right? You go on the page of the skin you want to buy, and you buy the first listed one. Valve doesn't list the floats on the community market, therefore you would have to inspect individually each item to find a low float one. Right, that's very time consuming, so what I'm going to do is simply just go on CS Float, a third party website. I go on the gun I want, I click sort by float, and I buy the lowest float one there. And due to the rarity of this stuff, it can range from like 400 to 500% more than the standard market price. A 10-cent blue can go to a $20 blue, just by having a low float. But we're talking $20 here, we're not talking $5,000. This is something that Steam can capture. And as we discussed previously, if Steam wants to maintain the same level of revenue as they phase out cases and their gambling past, they need to make money on their community market. We discussed two ways in which they did so. The trade revert update on July 14th. People are actually using the reversal feature, which sort of instills a level of fear in buyers. They would rather just use the market in which they cannot be reversed. Even if you don't get reversed, you still can't really use the items. You can equip them in your loadout, but that's about it. You can't put stickers on it, you can't rename it. Most importantly, you can't trade it up. And lastly, it makes your items highly illiquid. I'd rather get 15% taken off my sale if it means I can spend the money immediately as opposed to in 8 days from now. If it's a $5 item, we're talking 75 cents. 8 days of my time is worth more than 75 cents. I'm simply just going to add money to my Steam account. This takes a significant amount of market share from the third-party websites, independently. Then we have the knife trade-up update. What it set out to do was raise the prices of reds and lower the price of knives. This effectively increases the pool of items that are under $2,000, aka Steam's max price you can list for. So now you could sell your M9 Doppler on the community market, no risk of reversal, and Valve is a very reputable company worth billions of dollars. You don't have to worry about your money going anywhere. Now, Valve's third update. Happened on the same day as the knife trade-up, but everyone was too fucking focused on that. We changed how floats were calculated. It is still an average of your 10 inputs, but now it's weighted based on your float cap. Some items only go from 0 to 0.15, for example. And before it took it at face value. If it was 0.01, then it was counted up as 0.01 in your average. But now we take this 0.15 range and we scale it up to 1 so that all skins are held in the same equal regard. So with that, Valve has artificially increased the demand of low float items. Now let's not get it twisted. Trade-ups are gambling, maybe even more so than cases. And gambling is an inherently impulsive activity. That's why we saw all the case sales move from float to the community market on that July 14th update. People don't want to wait 8 days to open their cases, they want to open them right now. And in the same vein, I don't want to wait 8 days to do my trade-up, I want to do it right now. But if I use a third-party website, I have to wait 8 days. So I want to use the Steam community market. Not only that, right? Low float guns are much harder to find because we've changed the fundamental formula and how it's calculated. So Valve has artificially increased demand for them by changing the formula and subsequently also decreased the supply because there's less items that you can actually use. Okay, but in due time, right, low float guns will drop from cases and come from weekly drops, right? Enter Genesis. Before, we opened up a case. We got lucky, we got a factory new skin, and it just so happened to be 0.000 float, right? No matter what the float value is, you pay $250 for the case. So Valve makes a flat rate. Now, with the Genesis terminal, you're not only paying for the skin full price, which some people simply aren't going to do, which keeps their supply low, they will charge upwards of 100% increase for low float. And now how you see this comes together. So Valve has increased the demand for low float items. In their increase of demand, they've effectively lowered supply. The actual inputs we can use have decreased. Third-party options are a hassle because you have to wait 8 days to gamble, which is not what people want to do. And as the case supply dries up, you will be forced to buy low float items from the Genesis terminal, paying full price. So all of this culminates into Valve now controlling the low float supply of every single gun that comes in the future. All that's left for them to do is add a little graphic on the bottom of the Steam community market that tells you the float value of each gun. And with that, they will make money from the sale of each low float gun on the terminal, sometimes 200 to 300% of the original price. And then they will take control of the actual movement in the market, resales, and take 15% off of every single one of those sales. And that is the last corner of the market in which they had no control over. They've now rendered third-party websites completely obsolete unless you want to cash out. And I believe that's their end goal. They don't want to get rid of third-party websites. They serve a very important purpose to Valve. They let people cash out, but they're not legally liable for it. But what they didn't want was third-party websites taking their business. And with this system right here, they now have as much control over the flow of items in Counter-Strike as I think they can possibly get. They'll allow the sale of $200,000 items. They don't care about that. I mean, that's one sale every 6 months. They care about the billions and billions and billions of dollars that happen on the daily. So basically what I'm saying is the supply is drying up. Buy low float guns. Thank you for listening to my incoherent rambling once again. I'm just trying to lay out the facts of what's happening, and I'm just making inferences based on those facts. For every person that loses money in this market, there's someone who gains. And I want myself and I want the people watching this to be the ones who gain. This is a market. People are very emotional. And as long as you take your emotions out and you look at the facts objectively and you make informed decisions based on those facts, you will never lose. Not in this market, not in any market, not in anything you apply yourself to in life. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I tried to make it as coherent as possible. There's a lot of stuff to be said and it's very interesting and I just kind of want to get it out there. So it's not as organized as I want it to be, but I still think there's a ton of shit that you were able to learn from this. So, thank you guys. That giveaway's still going on. You just read the fucking comment. I'm not talking about it anymore in the video. Later.